Rabbi David Weiss, thank you so much for being with us here today and sharing your perspective in this very important times. You've been to not only Gaza, you've been to Lebanon, you've been to Iran, you've been throughout the Middle East. As a rabbi, how was your experience visiting these countries?
Yes, well, first, with the help of the Almighty, I pray to the Almighty to bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of sanctifying His name and bring peace to the world, inshallah. And assalamu alaikum. Yes, I've been to these parts of the world, thank God, and my experience was a blessing. People are so friendly, so concerned that I should feel comfortable and not feel that I'm out of place, and that's not only me, but my colleagues.
And on the ground in Gaza, can you maybe share some experiences that you had interacting with Palestinians?
Each and every day was an experience that really should be recorded and repeated. But I think we speak about going to visit, that I went to visit after one of the Operation Castlet, I think it was called, after the bombing, the just horrific attacks where they slaughtered families. And I went to Zaytun. It was a Samuni family where it's like around 30 members of one family was murdered. Today, unfortunately, you hear this constantly. Whole members of a family are just killed in one bombing. But we went there, and there was some the members left over from the family, and we went and cried with them, and they embraced us. And even though we are Jewish, yet they understood to differentiate between a Jew and the ones who are attacking them, that it's the Zionist state of Israel. They understood, and they showed warmth and friendship, and exceptionally the children who really who technically shouldn't know or understand the difference, yet they embraced us, and we found this. We went to visit the hospitals and the orphanages, and we only found friendship, warmth, and a yearning that we can be together in peace.
And meanwhile, when you're finding this friendship on the ground in Gaza and in the demonstrations here, when people tell you to go to Gaza and create this fear for Jewish people to be in the Middle East, what would you say to them?
Yeah, this is unfortunately this is part of the Zionist method of turning the narrative on its head, as if there's a conflict, a religious conflict, that Jews and Muslims weren't living together, and that we weren't enjoying the coexistence of helping each other. So they turn to us and they say, "Huh, go to Gaza, go to Iran, go to these places. Let's see if you will be." And so, but we have heard this so many times, so many years, that we know that if there's an opportunity to sit down and talk slowly and dissect the issue, then they would have to agree that they've been duped. But unfortunately, the general system is that Zionism has a brainwashing system, that around the world, that they vilify the victims, the people of Palestine and the Muslims in general, as if there's an ingrained hate to Jews, and we cannot coexist, and that creates panic and fear that the people in Israel. Now, I'm not condoning that, obviously, and it doesn't justify it, but they're so fearful, they're panicked that they're going to be murdered like by the Nazis. It's tragic, it's false, and the opportunity doesn't lend itself through the mainstream media to clarify and to explain the truth, that this is totally patently false, that we were living together as history attests, and we should be we can live together, and everybody wants to live together in peace.
Yes, and we certainly want to give you an opportunity to clarify all of this because your voice is very important. Not only are you a rabbi, you are a descendant of Holocaust survivors, right? Your grandparents perished in Germany during the Nazi Holocaust. And can you describe how that fuels your activism today?
Well, my grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. My father-in-law was in Auschwitz and was in the death march out of Auschwitz, all of blessed memory. They died because they were Jews, and as all our spiritual leaders, the rabbis, keep on insisting that this does not give us the right to occupy another people, to take the land from them. But on the contrary, we are required to have the Palestinian people have their peace, and they should not be subjugated to a similar oppression. We are Jews. This is the requirement of a Jew, and we hope that, and that would be the merit for our grandparents who died in Auschwitz. This is something that the community that it suffered knows the suffering has to be used for justice and good. And it's unfortunately, again, being turned on its head. It's being used, the Holocaust, as a tool to justify more murder and killing of innocents. This is against God. It's satanic, and with God's help, we won't be silent.
And Rabbi, what would you say to those who conflate being anti-Zionist with being anti-Semitic?
Well, this first of all is clearly a misnomer. It's clearly a falsehood, because just as there is a difference between day and night, between black and white, Judaism and Zionism, never the twain shall meet. It is the diametric opposite. Judaism is to be subservient to God, to serve God, and to accept that God protects us. We don't count on the gun to protect us, and we are forbidden, since the destruction of the temple, to kill, to steal, or to re-establish a Jewish state. So even in an empty land, an uninhabited land, and we are required to show gratitude to people who did us good, which is for hundreds and hundreds of years, the Muslims and Arabs and the Ottoman Empire did us. So in every facet, in every way you turn this coin, Zionism is a distinct contradiction to Judaism. Zionism is a base nationalism, to have a piece of land. It has to vilify the people who were kind to us, take the land away from them, ignoring that God says, don't attempt to establish a Jewish land. In every aspect, in every facet, it's contradictory, unacceptable to Judaism. The fact that the rabbis and the religious communities around the world, the very religious communities, invariably from Argentina to US to UK to Canada to Jerusalem to Al-Quds, they are all, the very religious communities are opposed not only to what's happening in Gaza today, which everybody, common sense, common decency, deems this unacceptable, but even the root, the ratification, the creation of a so-called Jewish state was immediately opposed by all the Torah authorities. So when one stands up and says, "I'm opposed to this state," you're not anti-Jewish. The rabbis demand this, and the rabbis who did oppose this, if they were living to their misfortune under the rulership of the Zionists, they were brutally beaten and arrested. And even people around the world, as we Jews in the United States, we get death threats and we get attacked physically.
And recently we're seeing a lot more of that at the demonstrations. You mentioned that religious Jews in Jerusalem and Israel get attacked, but we're seeing similar things here. While the police does protect people, we're seeing Zionist mobs getting violent, throwing 100%. Bricks. We've seen. Can you describe those situations that you see this violence here?
Yeah, they walk around with this aura that as if they're protecting themselves from Nazis. I mean, it is an insult, as I say, to common sense. The religious communities that are upholding the Torah, that are peaceful people, we stand out and we demonstrate, and we get brutally attacked together with the pro-Palestinian students and others who are peaceful people standing out there and making comments, making a statement, and we are viciously physically attacked. And somehow, being that the given is that the ones who are supporting Zionism, they're protecting the Jewish people, and the ones who are opposing them are anti-Semitic. So it takes a while, even for the police and the press, to admit, to recognize that the ones who are standing there and speaking up for the people of Palestine are the victims. They automatically look at us with a suspicious eye, as if we're some wild, inhumane people, and it's almost that we deserve to being attacked. And if somebody picks up a hand just to protect himself, they'll snap a picture where he's putting out his hand to protect himself, that he's as if he's attacking. This is, I'm talking of not something that happened one day. I'm talking about years of experience, and especially since October 7th, that we are really bitterly, brutally attacked as Jews. So I like to say that, I mean, who is the anti-Semite? Who is the personification of anti-Semitism, if not the Zionist state of Israel, that is killing Palestinians, beating and killing and assassinating rabbis and Jews, and causing a hate, a rift between Jews and Muslims? They exacerbate this hate that was never there. So who should be deemed, what should be the textbook definition of anti-Semitism, if not the Zionist state of Israel? And add to that, how many soldiers of the Israel died for their cause? That is a baseless, is a selfish, flawed cause of a nationalism of taking a land from others. It's not the religion. So they're creating death of Jews. Who is anti-Semitic? It's an insult to common sense to refer to the ones who stand up and plead for the lives of children, the ones who stand up and plead that they should leave the Jews alone, that these are anti-Semites. It's just beyond words, and it's criminal for the ones who prefer this charge on those on the ones who are pleading for Palestine, because it's like a lazy way of shirking responsibility. When people are being bombed in Palestine and all, and people are pleading that you should study the case and understand what's happening, and say, oh, they're anti-Semitic, dismissing them anti-Semitic. So you're just shirking the responsibility of understanding what's happening here, and letting us, the Jewish people, who are Jews and who are labeled and are obvious Jews, when we go to the airports, wherever we go around the world, people conflate the two, and they say, oh, he's a Jew, so he's supporting the state of Israel. As everybody says, it's anti-Semitic, it's one and the same. So I get held responsible for the actions of this nationalist movement that's actually going against God and the Torah. So it's a criminal abuse of the word anti-Semitism.
And you're being, as you said, held responsible because this movement is claiming that they're doing what they're doing. They're doing this in your name. They're saying that they're doing this to defend Judaism, to defend Jews, and they're doing it in your name. What would you say to those claims?
That it is a malicious, knowingly false abuse of the name Judaism, and the false representation of the Jewish people, because Judaism is expressly clearly in its command that we are, since the destruction of the temple, forbidden to establish a Jewish sovereignty. And we've gone through the Inquisition, the Crusades, we've gone through 2,000 years of exile, and we had many opportunities. It was called the Golden Age of Judaism. We could have bought the land, and all the great leaders of Judaism, which was the rabbis, because that's what Judaism is, a religion. So whether it is the Rambam, Moshe Maimonides, the Ramban, Moshe ben Nachman, and all the great leaders of the Maharal of Prague, every one of them throughout the generations, when they were asked by the constituents, by their communities, maybe we should create our own sovereignty, they said, no, have patience. God is compassionate. When the time to end exile will happen, then God, with his compassion, will make this metaphysical change, where all humanity will serve him in harmony. But till that day comes, it is expressly forbidden to re-establish any Jewish sovereignty, even in an empty land, and that is respected and upheld by the Jewish people for 2,000 years, although we suffered through so much trials and tribulations. So when they come along, the Zionists, and they say they're representing Judaism and they're representing the Jewish people, it's a malicious lie at the cost of Jewish lives around the world.
And what would you say maybe to Jewish people who look at this history of exile that you mentioned for the 2,000 years and more, and say that maybe buy into the Zionist narratives and say that they need a strong Israel to be safe and to defend themselves, but also maybe they're watching what's happening in Gaza and they're feeling a little conflicted at all the death that's happening throughout the genocide. What would you say to them?
Well, we always plead with people that we know that most of them are simply, they've been brainwashed, they've been taught from their youth. Because most of the people today obviously are not from the beginning of Zionism. Zionism is 100-odd years since the Hitler is around 80 years. So these people are children who have heard or witnessed, or at least heard and know, have members of the family who suffered, who were murdered by Hitler. So they use this issue and they try to create an atmosphere of panic, of fear, that we need something to protect. Look, we're going to be murdered if, God forbid, if we don't establish some insurance policy, they call it, a safe haven. But if you, again, it's an insult to common sense. It's an insult to basic logic and knowledge, because if you would like to create a state because you say, I'm not safe, so we will discuss that. Create a state, don't create a state. But the first thing is, don't use a religion that clearly teaches that you are forbidden to establish this state. Using somebody else's identity is like counterfeit, is a crime. They're using Judaism that our rabbis, the leaders of the Torah authorities and the books, as it clearly says in the Talmud and so on, we are forbidden to establish a Jewish sovereignty. We believe that God protects us. You scorn, you laugh at that, you say God doesn't protect us, do what you want. Pick your religion. We're not happy they make their own religion, but don't steal my religion. That comes from losing God's ethics, the morals of God. That you can take the religion that just for your convenience and use it in order to intimidate and silence opposition. So using Judaism for their selfish gains, that is criminal. But on top of that is the falsification of Judaism. But but more than that, and again, it's rooted in blasphemy, in saying that God is weak. It's so insult to common sense, because you're claiming you're turning to God, and he say God is weak, God can't protect us. I have to take a gun to protect us, and it's forbidden, as I say, and we do not condone. I say they should call it something else. They shouldn't call it Judaism. Not that. But God forbid, they shouldn't do that either, of course, because how do you have the right to, if you want to make a land, a country, stealing it from another people, why don't you make it in the Sahara Desert? I mean, I'm not going to say you should steal Sahara Desert, I'm saying, well, make it in the desert. Why are you taking another land? Why are you taking it from the Palestinian people? But even then, we would not agree to it, of course, because Judaism does not permit Jewish people of making our own sovereignty. We're an exile decreed by God. But their whole act is criminal from every aspect, from every way you look at it.
And what would you say then to people who turn this on the back and trying to marginalize you?
Well, if you talk, there was great rabbis who said, like, if you want to look at the majority, well, the majority you could go to could be Hindus or something. If you're looking at majority, that's not the way it works. We, as we say, were over 1,600,000 males from the age of 20 to 60 on Mount Sinai, accepted the Torah from God, and we accepted to be subservient to God and accept the laws. Where the Torah is very exacting and clear. We were taken into the Holy Land. We were driven from the Holy Land, as King Solomon writes in his book Shir Hashirim. We are expressly we say because of our sins in our prayers, every religious Jew says, because of our sins we were driven from the land, and we're under 3 oaths not to return en masse, not to the Holy Land, not to rebel against nations, not to try to leave exile. Judaism is not ultra religious, or they want to say fanatic religion. There's a Judaism is a religion that has a distinct system, the way it works, an exacting way, and you could be Lithuanian Jew, Sephardic Jew, Yemenite Jew, Ashkenazic Jew. We are all from different customs from around Europe, but you have the Ivy League of Jewish learning is Brisk in New Jerusalem. You have the Hasidic leaders, all of them. We have the compilation, the rabbis speak out, which is a compilation of all the major rabbis, the Baba Sali, the ones from Morocco, from Tunisia. Every one of the great Jewish leaders said this is unacceptable. It's not fanatic, it's not fringe, it's the basics of Judaism. And in fact, when you go to our Jewish communities, these are distinguished, beautiful, learned communities that in the United States, it's right across from Manhattan, the largest concentration of religious communities. They are in every field. They are in every business. They are and they are scholars, the greatest rabbinical. This is not extreme. It's the basic of Judaism. When one is ignorant of Judaism, then it's very easy to buy into, because the United Nations recognized the Israeli rabbinate, which is it was when a criminal entity comes, and in order to give them legitimacy, to give them some, they create their court system. Does that if the mafia will create a court system? Are you going to say that it's a legitimate? If Hitler created has his court system, does that make it legal or right? Or because Germany went after that court system, it's patently evil. That is what we're dealing with here. Judaism is an exacting system, and all the Jews who are true to Judaism, go around the world, the very religious, from the streets of Mea She'arim in Al-Quds in Jerusalem to our streets in New York, who are following the same system that we had Judaism that was in Europe and back throughout the generations without any changing. These are all anti-Zionist. We will not accept the oppression of the Palestinians, the stealing of the land, or the mere existence of the Zionist state of Israel. It's not Jewish. The Zionists, are what is called extreme. They're fringe. They're breaching the laws of the Torah, and it's not Jewish.
Rabbi, as you've mentioned, since the establishment of the State of Israel, rabbis have been speaking out against Zionism, and you've been doing the same. And since October 7, the whole world has started drawing more attention to this issue, and you're still at the forefront, at the demonstrations, arm in arm with the students, the pro-Palestine crowd. Where do you see everything headed going forwards from this point onwards?
Well, with God's help, the first thing is that we believe that there's a great God, almighty, we call him, all compassionate. So we always hope every day that this will be the day of the end of the occupation. We will see a free Palestine, a free Palestine that will be able to live together in harmony as we've had for so many hundreds and hundreds of years. That we will be able to turn to the Palestinians and say, here is back your homes. I carry around the key that I got in Baja Barajna in Lebanon, in the refugee camp, to show how they're yearning for the freedom, their homes in Palestine and Jerusalem. And I carry that around always to see how that we are all, with God's help, inshallah, hoping to God for that. And what we are continuing to do. Before I mention, I just want to say just two statements from two great rabbis, one from the Ashkenaz world, from Europe, that every Jew recognizes them as the Torah authority that we use as he condensed the Jewish law called the Mishnah Berurah. His name was Rabbi Yisrael Meir Cohen. who lived from 1839 till 1933, 15 years prior to the ratification of the State of Israel. And everybody recognizes his greatness, his Torah authority. And he stated, the Zionists are dead limbs of our people, which causes the entire body to rot. This was the Torah authority that everybody recognizes and uses his books, his law books. He says it's a metaphor. It's like a dead limb of our people, which causes the entire body to rot. And one of the great leaders of the Sephardic world that everybody recognizes, he was called Baba Sali. He comes from Morocco, and he lived in Jerusalem many years. He was from 1890 to 1984, so well into the establishment of the state. And he said, I hereby join the great rabbis of the Sephardic Eideh Haredus, the God-fearing community, in the holy city of Jerusalem in support of the Torah ruling that it is forbidden to participate in the governmental elections because it is against our holy Torah. This is what it's all about. So it's very clear that there's Judaism, and this is opposed to the state, to the existence of the state, what emanates, and there's Zionism. That's just another ersatz Judaism, a facade. They use the Judaism as a facade, an intimidation tool. And you're asking now, since the October 7th, we've gone hand in hand together with the Palestinian people, with the people supportive of Palestine. And I can just say that we hope, like I say, that our actions, sometimes the Almighty is looking for the actions of people, and that will be the catalyst to bring the free Palestine. We don't know, and we are witnessing that just as there is so much unity, there's so much of us solidarity and standing up, at the same time there is a tremendous spring of the opposition, of the powers of government and so forth, to squelch and to stifle the voice of these people called humanitarians. I call people who's doing the work that the Almighty requires of us, and they're being intimidated, silenced, fear thrown into them because they're being thrown out of countries, and at least threatened with being thrown out. I mean, it's beyond the powers of many people to be able to stand out on the streets today. But with God's help, we will not be silent, and with God's help, we hope that God, with His compassion, will bring success to our work.